China Renaissance plunging overnight in Hong Kong after that company said that its chairman and CEO is missing.
In February 2020, the famous Chinese investment bank, China Renaissance Holdings, caused panic in the Chinese market when they announced that the billionaire CEO of the bank, Bao Fan, had disappeared and no one knew where he was exactly. Bank officials and employees tried to reach him for days without success. He did not respond to their calls or messages. The second day, the bank's shares collapsed because everyone was terrified and asking themselves how someone of this importance could disappear like this in the blink of an eye, and no one knew where he was. After 10 days, the bank came out and announced that they had finally found their CEO. They said that Bao Fan was being investigated by the Chinese government, and this news, unlike the news of his disappearance, wasn't a surprise at all. Almost everybody knew that the lost billionaire was mostly in the hands of the Chinese government, because over the last 2 years, the Chinese government has made the same move with many businessmen in China. Billionaires disappear suddenly, and no one knows where they are. And one of the most famous examples of this is the founder of Alibaba, the famous Chinese businessman and billionaire Jack Ma, who has been missing for almost 2.5 years, specifically since the end of October 2020. This makes us ask several speculations and questions. For example, where did he disappear and how does he live? The Financial Times reported in November that Jack Ma has lived in Japan for at least 6 months. Once the Chinese government turned against Jack and decided to calm his massive empire, which had become too large from their perspective, Jack was forced into voluntary exile in Japan. Jack went back to China at the end of March, and on the day he got there, he got the news that his empire, Alibaba's, was going to be split into 6 units. The question is, why would this company need to be divided? And the most important question remains, what would happen to his famous company and group, the source of his original dispute with the Chinese government? The 20th National Congress of the ruling Communist Party of China met in October 2022, with Xi Jinping serving as both the party's leader and China's president at the same time. At the end of the conference, party members elected Jinping for the 3rd time as General Secretary of the Communist Party Central Committee and, accordingly, as President of China after the Chinese Constitution was amended in 2018, so that the president is allowed to remain in his office without restrictions. After this meeting, which may be considered a turning point in modern Chinese history, the government began trying to organize its institutional structures, particularly the economic ones, in which there were many puzzles due to policies related to the corona epidemic and the fierce campaign that targeted many businessmen in China. After the party's 20th Congress, the Chinese government spent months trying to convince the billionaire Jack Ma to move back to China through mediators who were retired party members and Chinese businessmen. The Wall Street Journal reports that these mediators tried repeatedly to convince Jack to return to China and participate in the nation's development, but each time he declined and instead decided to remain outside the country. In spite of this, the Chinese government kept trying and appealing, though in a different way. Li Kong, China's new prime minister, assured Chinese businessmen during his first press conference in March 2023 that the government supports the private sector, which gave them confidence. On the last day of that same month, March 27, 2023, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, unexpectedly returned to China after living abroad for more than a year. When Jack showed up, he was in his birthplace of Hangzhou, eastern China, visiting a school he had established there. During this visit, Jack didn't talk about anything related to business or the fate of his companies, so no one could determine whether or not his return to China was related to the assurances he received from the Chinese government, and if he was going to settle again in China or not. But the remarkable thing is that Jack's visit coincides with the announcement of the Alibaba Group that it will divide its empire, whose value exceeds $250 billion, into 6 different companies, which are Global Digital Commerce Group, Digital Media and Entertainment Group, Cainiao Smart Logistics Group, Cloud Intelligence Group Local Services Group, Taobao Mall Commerce Group. These companies, which specialize in a wide range of markets, including e-commerce and cloud computing, media and delivery, and the entertainment industry, will operate as of the date of their division as individual companies, and each company will have a CEO. instead of operating as divisions of the same company. Each division can go public in the stock market, and Alibaba Group CEO Daniel Chang will continue in his current role as chairman of the board of directors and CEO of the group, which will eventually become a holding with subsidiary companies. Investors were happy with the news of the split, driving Alibaba's stock price up by over 14% in New York trading and adding almost $32 billion to the company's market cap. So the question is, why the investors happy because of this? Well, the answer is that there are two reasons. The first is that the market has seen that this step is a sign that the strong pressure campaign that the Chinese government has been running against technology companies, especially the Alibaba Group, for the past years, which has caused the Alibaba Group to lose nearly $70 billion in market value, is now settled, and therefore the Chinese government will no longer be tight on the company anymore, which will mean potential growth. The second reason why shareholders are happy with the split is that they believe that this move will increase the company's value and benefits, since it will facilitate the detection of unprofitable companies and thus their closure. As we've already mentioned, Alibaba Group also operates in other industries, including media and entertainment, as well as food delivery. Of course, not all of these departments are successful. Hence, when we examine the Alibaba Group's financials, we see that the Taobao website generates 67% of the group's revenues and more than 100% of the group's operational profits from its e-commerce activities. And the rest of the company's divisions have considered cash burners who incur losses, so they get funded from the Taobao benefits. But once the group splits into separate companies, the unprofitable ones will be shut down sooner or later. Does the Alibaba Group want this? According to the Wall Street Journal, Jack Ma, who has recently been abroad, personally supervised the partition process. Jack had multiple conversations with Alibaba officials, including the current CEO of the group, in which he encouraged them to split the company in order to increase the company's chances of success in the Chinese market, which is notoriously large and competitive. Up until now, it hasn't been clear if the Chinese government pushed for this split or not, but what is certain is that this step serves the government's objectives, since they have spent a lot of time and effort between September and December of 2022, trying to bring down the massive Alibaba empire, which employs almost 240,000 people. In January of last year, the Chinese government acquired a stake in Alibaba through two of its subsidiaries by purchasing what are known as golden shares in 2 units belonging to Alibaba. In September, Zhejiang Media Group, which is owned by the Chinese government, acquired a 1% stake in Alibaba's Youku unit, which produces films and television shows. And in December, the Chinese government's Wangcheng subsidiary also acquired a stake in Alibaba's Guangzhou unit, which operates the UC browser. These stakes are in the form of golden shares, which typically represent no more than 1% of a company's value. However, they allow the government or its representatives to have a seat on the board of directors and also give them the right of veto, which ensures that they can block any decision the board may make. The Chinese government is doing all of this because it is well known that it is highly sensitive to large private companies, especially technology companies, whose influence and ability to affect the lives of Chinese citizens in many aspects exceeds that of the Communist Party itself. This is something the Chinese government sees as a significant threat that endangers it, and this talk takes us naturally to the Ant Group, the mythical financial technology company, which without the Chinese government would have been the most important company in the world. The initial public offering for the Ant Group was scheduled to take place in November 2020, and it was anticipated that it would be the biggest IPO in history. However, the offering was canceled just hours before its scheduled time by order of the Chinese president himself, who was reportedly angry with the founder of the group, Jack Ma. Jack Ma criticized Chinese financial authorities for being backward-thinking and stifling innovation during a speech at the Bund Summit in Shanghai on October 24, 2020. His comments upset the Chinese officials, including the head of the People's Bank of China, who were present at the event. Jack's comments turned his life upside down. First, on a personal level, he disappeared for more than a year and a half. Second, on a business level, the Chinese government targeted both of his companies, Alibaba and Ant Group. While Alibaba was undergoing an antitrust investigation and facing a possible breakup, Ant Group was deliberately dismantled, not only as a punishment for Jack, but also because it posed a significant risk to the government. In short, Ant Group could have become a standalone alternative to the whole Chinese financial sector, because of its consumer data, which even the government did not have. Therefore, controlling and downsizing the company became a primary goal for the Communist Party. At the same time, the Chinese government sought to weaken Jack's grip on Ant Group, which it achieved through several measures, and he finally decided in January 2023 to quit his position as CEO. To sum up, despite being the mastermind of Ant Group, Jack Ma will no longer have control over the company. Additionally, according to Bloomberg, Jack Ma holds himself responsible for the harsh campaign run by the Chinese government against Ant Group as a result of his forceful speech in Shanghai. However, the Chinese government would eventually have destroyed the Ant Group sooner or later because the power it was gaining was so terrifying that even the financial and informational power of the Chinese government was dwindling in front of it. Anyway, Ant Group was supposed to be ready for an initial public offering in early 2024, but will the Chinese government allow the IPO to proceed, or will it delay it again? No one knows. As usual, I have a question for you. If you were in Jack Ma's place and had to choose between two options, which one would you choose? The first option is to let Ant Group continue on its path and launch its initial public offering without any control from you, even though it was your idea. The second option is that as long as it won't be under your control, neither you nor the government will have it, and it's better to shut it down. Which one would you choose? I will read all your answers in the comments. In the end, I hope you liked this video, and don't forget to share the videos with your friends and subscribe to the channel.